opportunity in him to build a bridge that has never been built before. We're trying to do it here on this show, but he has the bully pulpit of being president of the United States. From 1964 up until this present time, especially 2008 when he was elected, we were trying to build that bridge. From 1964, when the first Civil Rights Act was passed, until 2008, Americans had been trying to build that bridge. And the one hope that so many of us who did not vote for him thought in hindsight, well, maybe this is something that will happen for the good in his presidency. Maybe he can bring us together, at least racially. But no, that didn't happen. And today in Dallas, there with my new personal hero, David Brown, police chief of the Dallas Police Force, he basically tried to widen that gulf even more. Now, listen, I'm going to talk about this with K. Carl Smith coming up in the next block. And K. Carl's going to be on with me for a couple of blocks. I want to talk with him about this. And then later on the show, we have Stacy on the right. She's going to be on. And you want to stick around for this show, no doubt about it. I want to thank all of you for making us the most listened to talk show in the Arklatex area, the C.L. Bryant Show. But I want you to consider this as we go to break here in just a minute. People do not succeed, by and large, as a group. People succeed as individuals who then contribute to other people of like mind that create a group. But unless you have the person who is taking it upon themselves to go and get whatever their dream is here in this nation, the success process for that person doesn't begin until they, as an individual, decide that this is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to pursue my life, my liberty, and my happiness, what makes me happy. Until that person decides to do that as an individual, the group means nothing. You can do it so that you can form a group centered around your ideas, but in order for you to be truly successful, you as the individual have to make the move. But what has happened with black folks in this country, the progressive liberals have corralled them into this corral. They've corralled them into this range of political servitude. And they have told them, they have made them believe that unless you all do this together, you can't succeed. That, my friends, is exactly what the slave master wants the slave to continue to think. That they must stay within the system in order to get fed, in order to get housed, in order to get clothed. And this is what's happening to the rest of America as we speak, because that group of people were only test tube babies. They were only a culture in a dish that is now beginning to permeate throughout the culture of all America. You can't describe or you can't explain Bernie Sanders unless you understand what they're trying to do, not just to black folks, but to all Americans. That's the design. And don't ever think that your children are not in the crosshairs, because they are. I'm CL. This is the CL Bryant Show. I'll be back with my good friend, confidant, one of the stars in my movie, Runaway Slave. His name, K. Carl Smith, Frederick Douglass Republicans, when I return. Bye. CL, back with you on this Tuesday in the jeweled cities of the Arklatex. I want to take the time right now to thank a few of our sponsors: Holmes, Honda, European, Bailey's Fine Jewelers, Tiger Axle, Milam Cars, DavTac Custom Arms and Ammo. Tell them CL sent you and get 10% off of any purchase that you make there at DavTac Guns and Ammo. Just like not paying taxes, go by and see them. Signature Cleaning Service, Subway, and Chevyland. I want to thank all of them for sponsoring this segment of the CL Bryant Show. When we left, I told you that I was going to have on with me someone who I have grown to respect, know, really love his work over the period of time that we've known each other. K. Carl, we're going about 5-6 years now that we've known each other. And welcome back to the CL Bryant Show. Folks, K. Carl Smith, founder of Frederick Douglass Republicans. How you doing, brother?
CL, it is great to be talking to you again, and thank you for the chance to be on the show and kind of rub elbows with you once more.
Absolutely, man. So what's going on in your world right now? Let's catch up right quick.
Well, we're busy, man. I'm traveling, of course, doing a lot of training. You know, we have a training program where we teach conservatives how to, number one, defeat the propaganda attacks of the left, and teach them how to take control of the narrative, so we can learn how to better articulate a unifying language of liberty that sparks an emotional appeal for conservative values.
What is that website, Kay?
It is, check us out at libertymessengerusa.org. libertymessengerusa.org.
Now, today the president was doing his thing. The president was doing his thing in Dallas, Texas, and did he bring us together, or did he push us further apart in your estimation, K. Carl?
See, I apologize. You got to update me on this. I've been traveling a lot. I know he's.
Oh, you've been in airports. I understand. A lot of times when we get, folks, I want to explain this to you. When you're traveling a lot, like he and I do, a lot of times, yeah, you'll see something on the airport monitors and televisions, but you have no clue what's going on, sometimes for 5 or 6 hours, 7 hours, a whole day, depending on where you're going. And so let me tell you, he was in Dallas today, K. Carl, and he was at a memorial service for the 5 slain officers. And he started off the speech talking about we're not as divided as we may think we are, but he ended up talking about gun control. And so it's amazing how he turns everything like this into that type of stories. The puppet masters, let me ask you about that. The puppet masters, are they still at work in this country, K. Carl, as far as keeping the races divided?
You call them puppet masters. I call them Judas ghosts, and yes, they are, because it's a lucrative endeavor. And so it's about divide and conquer. And once we realize that we have a lot more in common, once we cross that abyss, if you will, the left don't have a chance, and we can start doing some things to turn this nation right side up.
And you know what? I want you to explain to people why you started the Frederick Douglass Republicans. It's a very interesting concept, folks, and of course he does seminars throughout the country, is because of the approach that he has, and of course the philosophy that he has behind that. K. Carl, tell us why.
Just quickly, as we know, as conservatives, the word conservative has been so demonized by the left that before conservatives can get a chance to say anything, we have already been discredited, because that word conservative has a negative connotation in minority communities. It's a word that's synonymous with the word racist. So if you're a black conservative, you go into the black community, you say you're a black conservative, well, you just grew 5 heads.
Yeah, you might as well have said, hey, look at me, I'm an Uncle Tom.
Exactly right. And that's how it's perceived. And for good reason. There's some historical reasons why that word conservative has a negative connotation. So what has to happen, and you don't have to convert black folks to be conservatives. They already want, they just don't know it. So you got to hit them from the side. You got to speak their language of liberty. And what we teach in our workshop, in our online course, CL, that in minority communities, because of negative propaganda, the word conservative is not the language of liberty. The word conservative is the language of oppression. And you got to do what the Apostle Paul said. And, you know, Apostle Paul said, CL, the Apostle Paul was a diversity outreach specialist.
I like that. Becomes all things to all people in some cases.
Right, that's right. And when you read that, as 1 Corinthians 9:22, in some translation, Apostle Paul said, I entered their world, being the Gentiles, and I experienced life from their viewpoint. Well, if you enter my world as a black American and experience life from my viewpoint, you go quickly discover the word conservative is not a language of liberty. It's a language of oppression. So you have to speak a language that resonates with them without the wall going up. And that's what we cover in our classes, where we teach conservatives how to share your conservative values without the fear being called a racist, Uncle Tom, bigoted, sellout. Take control of the narrative and start changing or improving hearts and minds. Take
control of the narrative. K. Carl, I was on Hannity a little bit earlier today, and I got a chance to say this to Sean, that, and you just hit the nail on the head. The problem in the community, speaking of the black community, and the problem in America, if it's an American problem, Americans have to solve it. But the problem of violence in Chicago, New Orleans, Baltimore, and that type of thing, within the black community, is that or is that not something that black folks are going to have to deal with themselves because it is emanating from themselves? What would you say to that?
I would agree with you, because we can talk all day that the cops don't like us, but the question is, do you like yourself? And for every one black person that's killed by a cop, in terms of black homicide, it's 40 to 1. So we got to deal, and the Bible says, love them neighbor as you love yourself. You got to love yourself first.
Hold that thought right there. Hold that thought right there, K. Carl. We're going to come back with loving yourself first in lieu of everything that is going on in this country along this racial divide. I'm CL. This is the CL Bryant Show. Back in a minute with K. Carl Smith. CL back with you on this Tuesday evening. Yes, it may be that we're looking for a way out, but we're going to have to deal with it. Okay, Carl, we were talking about personal responsibility and having to. I think we may have dropped him, Jay. He's gone. Okay, we'll get K. Carl Smith back in just a minute. We get Michelle back in. Get K. Carl Smith here back in a minute. But we were talking about personal responsibility, and we were talking about people who need to understand worldview as well. And folks, let me tell you, that is the root, that is the genesis of the problem in this country right now, is that everyone is pointing a finger at someone else. And that will not work. Michelle, I'll take that call now. And I want to let you know that later on in the show, we're going to be taking your calls because I want to talk. This is something we got to talk about. This is something that we can't just let ferment until some ripe time where it might be safe to drink its finery like a wine. Racism doesn't age like that. It doesn't age. It only putrefies. And so you have to find a way to purify it. And that's what we're all about. Back on the line with me now is K. Carl Smith. K. Carl, when we left, we were talking about personal responsibility and becoming what is necessary for people to be the best that they can be. And you were talking about the Apostle Paul.
In terms of, I alluded to that the Apostle Paul gives us the blueprint on how to do diversity outreach. But also the question you asked me in terms of the black community, we have to love ourselves first before we can expect anybody else to love and respect us. We got to get a handle on this black-on-black homicide. I understand that sometimes the police force, they're trigger happy, unfortunately, but we have to understand it all. I think, like you said, it all emanates from how not only we see ourselves, but how the general public sees it, especially a black male. And that's something we got to deal with. And it's a serious problem.
Is there an image? Let me ask you this? I think I said this in a speech a couple of weeks ago somewhere. I think it may have been in D.C. Does the black community, and you'll understand what I'm talking about, is it now necessary, after years of identifying with a hip-hop culture in some cases, as far as black folks are concerned, is it now necessary for us to think about doing a makeover of who we are as far as the way America thinks about the color when they think about black folks? Because policemen also, they're human beings. They're affected by stereotypical thinking, too.
Sure.
What do you think?
And I think there's nothing new under the sun. This is something that was dealt with back in the 19th century when blacks were, especially black men, were pulled out and lynched because the general stereotype of black male is that black males are a menace to society and they're thugs. So when you have this general perception of this mental profile of the black male, you kind of get trigger edgy when you approach a black male like a police. They're human beings. So the image, and that image now, that negative image is also being pushed out there by the left-wing media. Every time you see a crime on the newspaper, on TV, they got that image of that black male of being a menace to society. So that's one of the things we're dealing with. And that same thing that happened back in the 19th century with lynching.
And it has become a detriment to inner city young black males in particular. But this is something I shared on Hannity earlier, K. Carl, is this. Think about this. They have the mantra being sung now that there's a all-out manhunt in the streets of America for black males to shoot them down. Now, black males only represent 4% maybe of the entire population, whereas black people represent about 13%. Right. If there was an active agenda to eliminate young black males. I don't think that'd be a very hard thing to do, which makes me think that there's not really that going on, except when it comes to black males on black males. Would you speak to that?
I think it's very, very complex because, we got the abortion issue. It's not just involving black males, but black males is considered that number. There's something that I saw today, I was doing some reading, where when you take a look at the number of blacks, last year, I think about 1,500 people died as a result of an on-duty cop shooting. Of that 1,500, 700 or so were white or other. The 300 were black. So here we are, 12% of the population, or 13% of the population, and 27% of the people who got shot last year that died at the on-duty police officer, 27%, which is double our American population, were black. So when you look at that number and you think about the history in the past, how black men have been targeted, it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder because history does have a tendency to repeat itself.
Amazing.
So,
and
we got to keep our eyes open for that because we got to make sure it doesn't happen again.
K. Carl in Birmingham, Alabama. Give your website right quick, K. Carl.
LibertyMessengerUSA.org.
LibertyMessengerUSA.org. In this entire conversation that we must have, be sure to check out LibertyMessenger.org. You'll find K. Carl Smith. Thank you so much for being on with me, brother. I'm CL. We'll be back in just a little bit.
Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
CL back with you on this Tuesday evening here in the jewel cities of the Arklatex, Shreveport, and Bossier. It is I, your native son. Coming up in the show here in just a couple of minutes is a friend of the show, one of our staunchest supporters, and that is Mr. Tom Milam, the only certified master dealer, car dealer in Louisiana. After over 45 years in the same location, we're going to be talking to him, and we're going to look at some perspective that he has. But first, on the line with me, the name, Michelle? Sonny, thank you for listening. Thank you for calling. And what's on your mind?
It's Joe. I was calling you. I was watching a Christian, local Christian broadcasting it's out of Louisiana. It's I won't call the name of it, because I'd imagine you may not want to name, but it's a big TV Christian station, and I heard a guy on there, and I didn't get his name, but from what I understand, he's a Christian black preacher,
Mm-hmm.
and he's written some books, and his latest book is Yellow Black Dog.
Yellow Black Dog.
Yellow Black Dog, but it's not. It doesn't sound.
Write that down, Michelle.
It sounds.
It sounds provocative. I got to get it. I got to get that book.
Yes, I don't know how you have to get off the internet, but the big publishers have got it.
Okay.
Publishers have got it. Some of the big publishers. You know that it's a national book. Anyway, he explains the way he explained it. It was how the black people have been treated by the Democrats from way back, how they got started, and he tells it all the way down the line. They didn't teach us that in school, and I have lots of black friends. I love my black friends. I love everybody. A person's color of the skin does not matter to me at all.
You know what? I'm looking, Michelle, my crack team of researchers, which is basically Michelle, is Black Yellow Dogs. I'm looking at it. The most dangerous citizen is not armed, but uninformed. That's what it's about.
That's it. Yeah.
Ben Kinchlow. I know Ben Kinchlow, and
because it explains to them. They don't know because they didn't teach it to us in school either. My mother and my granddaddy, they raised me that people color does never matter,
and you're 80 years old. You're 80 years old. Is that right?
Sir?
Are you 80 years old?
Yes, sir.
Is that right? Well, bless your heart. Listen,
I'm nearing that.
hey, I tell you what, God bless you and God keep you, and I pray that He gives you many more years upon the earth here.
And I pray that
Listen, thank you so much.
prayer, and I pray that all the people will get together and try to love one another, because skin color does not matter. All this is people that's trying to stir up stuff and make money off of it. That's all the whole thing amounts to.
Absolutely. Listen, sir, I want to thank you so much. And listen, God bless you and God keep you. Thank you for your call, and thank you for listening.
All right, I'll catch you later, see ya.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And now joining us is Tom Milam, who's been around a pretty good while himself. Not quite 80 years, but he's been around a pretty good while himself. And he's seen a lot of things evolve in this country, especially race. Tom, welcome for the first time to the C.L. Bryant Show. Thank you so much for everything that you do for me.
Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Tom, did you grow up in the South?
Yes. I come from a place called Danville, Virginia.
Danville, yeah, you're in the South.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So the evolution that we were talking about, that gentleman that was on the phone, give us your perspective from this point. You've probably heard me say that even though America may not have been, times may not have been better for all people, women, blacks, whoever, 50, 60 years ago, but people were better. What would you say to that? How would you say
I'd
that?
say that's pretty accurate. Look, when I'm growing up on the farm in Virginia, my neighbors were black folks. We worked on the same farm. We worked in the same fields together. And in fact, I couldn't call Uncle Bill there Uncle Bill. I couldn't. I had to call him Uncle Bill. I couldn't call him just Bill. I had to show respect to those same black folks as white folks and black folks together. You know, we're all the same people, eating the same food, eating off the same garden.
Southerners are like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you know what, and that brings up a very interesting thing that you just mentioned that most people don't think about as far as Southerners are concerned. Southerners, white and black, are much closer related and have much more in common than just about any other group of people in the United States, because we do eat the same foods. I mean, we any Southerner was not walk away from some cornbread and cabbage or what have you. You know, not going to walk away from it.
Pinto beans.
Pinto beans. In fact, got some going on at the house right now.
Oh, it's a lot of pinto beans on the stove, right?
And we also believe the same. We're basically religious. We have the same core values.
And we didn't lock our houses.
Back then, we didn't.
No.
I remember my grandparents didn't lock their houses.
No.
But with this thing that's brewing with Black Lives Matter and Hands Up, Don't Shoot, do you see things definitely taking a turn? In your age, and I pray God gives you many more years, but as you see this evolve from where you grew up to what we're talking about on the news media today, you have to lock your doors.
Absolutely. If you don't, you might not be there tomorrow, and somebody come in and walk out with you and all your stuff. So, but back in the 60s, it was a time, some bad times in the 60s and 70s. I remember that in the military mess halls, they're going to have a soul food day. And I'm thinking, my gosh, soul food day in a mess hall to make everybody happy, right? And this guy from New York City said, "What's soul food?" So he's a black dude from New York City. I said, "Well, it's just poor Southern eating. That's all. You got your greasy salad, you got your corn, crackling cornbread, you got your buttermilk, your black-eyed peas, and your pinto beans. That's soul food. That's food for the soul, brother. That's
yeah,
all."
and it was Southern food.
Yes.
You know, the strangest thing, as you know, I'm an interracial marriage, Tom, and when I went to eat for the first time at my wife's sister's house, Pat, who's going on to be with the Lord now, she had corn, black-eyed peas, cornbread, pork chops, and cabbage and all that laid out on the table. And I said, "Wow, Pat, so you prepared this meal because I was coming over, right?" And she looked at me like I was crazy. She says, "No, it's what I eat." You know,
This is my daily food.
it was Southern food. It was food that we as Southerners eat. It's amazing how we get that twisted and how we want to keep that twisted.
You know, we're forgetting one important thing about these problems we're having today. Have you ever been overseas and looked at some of these countries and how these people live? We live in the best country in the world, guys. We got some problems, but we live in the best country in the world, the whole wide world. But, you know, it's not the country that's the problem. It's the people that's in the country that's the problem. Now, we can go back to the parents, that we did our job, that we raised them right and put them in the right direction. I left home when I was 17, in the military. Dropped out of high school, and I got my education in the military. And I did well, I think.
You have.
I think I have.
You've done very well. Stay with me, folks. I'm going to be back with a couple more minutes with Tom Milam. Milam Cars. They're on Benton Road. Been there for 45 years. Same location. And a proud sponsor of the C.L. Bryant Show. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back in just a minute.
You jump so high, you jump so high, and then it lightly touched down. I met him in a
CL back with you on this Tuesday evening here in our homeland. The greatest nation on the face of the earth, the greatest success story the world has ever known. And that is the United States of America. And in studio with me is someone who, in fact, wore the uniform of this country during the Vietnam theater, as he calls it. And, of course, he was one of those who, when he returned from Vietnam, he was one of those who was spit at and spit on and called all types of ugly names. That's Mr. Tom Milam, the only certified master dealer, car dealer in Louisiana. Tom, again, I want to thank you for being here. But first, I want to take a phone call. Don is on the line. Don, I want to thank you for listening. Thank you for calling. What's on your mind, friend?
I just want to comment. I know, well, I actually don't know Mr. Milam. I've seen his commercials on TV, and I wanted to just acknowledge and praise his pro-American commercials. I have never, ever seen a businessman, with his beliefs put on a commercial like that, because they're afraid of offending this person or this group or that group. And his commercials, they're pro-American, and I think he should, he's putting his money where his mouth is and where his heart is.
And you know what, Don?
And I've seen those in the past, and, I wanted to acknowledge that. And I'd like to see you interview more of our OGIs like this. The World War II ones, too.
You hit the nail on the head, and you're right about the World War II ones. We're losing them at a high rate, and we need to have them on. But you hit the nail on the head. I was just talking to Tom during the break, and I told him, and I told Michelle, my producer, that we've got to have him back regularly to actually explore the mindset of the veteran from that point in time to where we are now. And what I really love about your call, Don, is this. This show, if anybody has any mistake or any question about it, this show is absolutely pro-American. Now I'll listen to your other side, and we'll talk about your other side and all that kind of stuff. We don't shy away from that. But there's no sense in you ever taking issue with me about any pro-American stuff, because I am. I'm also pro-cop as far as that's concerned. But we have to talk about our problems, and we have to talk about the things that make us less, and we have to talk about those things that can make us great again. And so we're on our way to being great again. I certainly hope so in this country. Don, God bless you. Thank you so much for your call.
Yeah, thank you, and keep those commercials up, Mr. Milam.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the compliment.
Tom Milam, the only certified master car dealer in the state of Louisiana. Tom, I have to have you back to talk about the theater that you served our nation in, Vietnam. You have seen, even though maybe the soldiers aren't being spit on now, but Mr. Milam, do we have the type of leadership? I know that maybe the politicians didn't let us fight the war in Vietnam. Maybe that was the case. Now, you got to come back and talk to us about that. But still, the leadership was different then than it is now. Speak to that for a couple minutes, if you would.
Well, we had generals, and we had presidents, and we had all these people doing what they thought was right. But they were all wrong. Obviously, we were lost. Mm-hmm. And, my dad always taught me that, look, don't start a fight, you can't win. If you want to fight, you have to fight to win. And we didn't go in to win. We come in to accelerate somebody's wealth, maybe.
Did political correctness begin around that time? It may not have been called that, but maybe political correctness started in that Vietnam theater. What do you think?
No, I don't think we got political correctness anywhere. Anywhere. Look, right now we have elections coming up pretty soon.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time wrapping my head around one of them candidates,
Yeah.
I don't think we have a good candidate. Sorry about that, folks, if you don't know on my side.
Yeah, well,
That's the facts of life,
Yeah.
I don't think I have a good candidate I'd like to vote for, But so do I like what's happening in the United States of America? I love my country. I love the people in my country. But our country has got to love us, too. And we as people and parents got to take care of our kids and lead them in the right direction and path. About 17, 18, you want to leave home. You want to go out and find yourself in the world. And you find yourself awful alone in the world unless you have an education and the right spirit the right enthusiasm in your heart.
You have an interesting story. I had a chance to sit and talk with Mr. Milam, Tom, for quite a spell one day over at your place. And, well, I think this may be it's the first time. That was the first time that I'd met you. I'd met your son before then. But you have an incredibly interesting story that I'd really love to share pieces of that with the radio audience as we go along through time. So listen, Tom, I want to thank you for being here today, and thank you for your support. People don't have to do what you do, and I certainly appreciate it. And folks, you'll be hearing more of the Tom Milam story as we go along. God bless and keep you, Tom.
Thank you, CL. Thank you very much.
We'll be back in just a little bit, but I want to thank, again, some of our sponsors, of course, Milam Cars. I want to thank Yoakum Toyota. Throw them in there, too. And Breches Insurance, Transmission Automotive, Grubburger,
2 minutes.
Dale's Paving, Mercatech, Red Wing Shoes, and SS Truck. Bossier Magazine, and one of our newest sponsors, welcome back, Josie Wright, Century 21 Elite. I encourage all of you to download the new and free CL Bryant app. You can hear the show anywhere in the world on the CL Bryant app. Download it onto your iPhone or Android device. And be sure to go to our Facebook page, TheCLBryantShow.com / TheCLBryantShow.com. Gonna be back with Stacy on the right. Stacy on the right when we return. You don't want to miss this interview. Folks, Mr. Milam said this when he was on the air with me. We're at a point in time where we are looking at very nebulous, smoky type of choices for America. Yes, we've all know what we want, but maybe we're not seeing clearly what we need in this country at this point in time in either one of these candidates. I know what I'm going to do. I know what I'm going to have to do. I also want to deal with what Jeb Bush said a little bit earlier today, later on the show. We'll be taking your calls, 320-5335, 320-5335. I am CL. This is the CL Bryant Show. And don't ever forget this. There's one thing I truly know. Regardless of where you are, Jesus saves. I'll be back in a minute. CL, back with you on this Tuesday here in the Jewel Cities of the Arklatex. And coming up will be Stacy Washington. Stacy on the Right is the name of her show. And folks, here, let me say this to you, that we can beat this horse all around the bush if we want, but let me tell you, there is a shaping of worldview that is going on right now that is not healthy in this country. I'm going to talk to Stacy Washington about that. Shaping our worldview. How is it done? It's done through data mining your young people, your children, when they're in school. I have to get back to all of the things that are going on at the same time in this country right now. I'm talking about the fundamental change that is underway, under construction right now, and so much of it is already being installed into the hearts and minds of our young people. And one of the things that is necessary for you parents to pay attention to is the two words, data mining. Now, we pretty much thwarted it here in public schools in Louisiana, but don't think that's not going to come back. Don't think that is something that is going to be off the table. Now, what is data mining? How do we get hands up, don't shoot in the middle of the street? How do we get Black Lives Matter in the middle of the street? How do we get Bernie Sanders? How do we get to a point where we're talking about men and women using bathrooms in the same place? How do we get there? It's just not something that you wake up, somebody wakes up one morning and say, hey, Mr. President, tell them this is what's going to happen. It doesn't happen like that. It happens over a period of time where they are grooming a mindset of young people to accept it once it is instigated and launched. You see, our young people, let's say the ages of, say, 10 to 25, 10 years old to 25 right now, in that 15-year span of time, they have had in their lives things that seem irregular to those of us who are older than that. They have had in their lives those things that we say are irregular all their lives. They have been groomed in the schools, right under your nose. Right under your nose. For all that time. So this is what you have to do. And I've said this before. You must take heed to what I'm saying. Please do. You have to get to a place where when Johnny and Susie come home from school, it's got to be more than how was your day. Because all they say is, oh, it's all right. And then they go do their homework or off to play or play the games, whatever it is. And, and that's it. You've got to start asking them, what did your teacher or someone else or whomever approach you with today? That's where your conversation with your children, if you're going to send them to public school, that's where it's got to come from today, because how was your day does not give them any inclination as to what truly went on in school. Joining me now is my next guest here on the C.L. Bryant Show, Stacy Washington. Stacy on the Right. This is one of the great minds in the country, and you need to check her out. StacyOnTheRight.com. Stacy Washington, I haven't seen you in a while, but it's really great to talk to you again. Welcome to the C.L. Bryant Show.
C.L., thank you so much for having me on today. I was just thinking to myself, when's the last time we saw each other? I think it was CPAC, but
Yeah.
for that, I think.
Yeah, it was.
Actually, I interviewed you for Freedom Works when I was writing for them some years ago, and so it's been a while since I've heard your voice, but I'm so glad to be on with you.
And so glad that you're here. Stacey, our nation, as you well know and that you well document, is, I do believe, sailing in very perilous waters, not only in the racial, down the racial line or on that sea of color that we travel on, but it's traveling on very perilous ground as far as its survival into the future. But this is what I want to ask you first before we get into our conversation, and I hope you can stay with me a little while because I certainly like to catch up. But this is what I want to ask you. Is the responsibility in this nation for rectifying the problems of the black community, is that something that black people should take personal and individual responsibility for, or is that something that big government can help us with as they've tried to for 60 years? I got about 2 minutes in this segment, Stacey, but go ahead and start with your answer if you would.
Well, okay, so I love this question because it goes to the heart of how we solve problems. And if you're having a problem in your family, you don't say, well, let me call up 10 people that we know or that we don't know and tell them about our family problem and see if they have some solutions because they're ultimately responsible for it. You don't call your boss. You actually handle that problem within the four walls of your home, the people who are in your family. And if you need outside assistance, you get that by all means, but the discussion starts there. And in the black community, what we're experiencing is a direct result of us deciding to partner with the Democrats for, as you said, 50 years, sometimes 60, 65 years in some cities of direct Democrat rule for the entire time. And then the other part is that the personal responsibility for what goes on this particular street that I live on, it's the people who live on this street. For the house that I live in, it's the people who live in that house. And so until we as black people say, you know, it's an embarrassing conversation with 8 out of 10 children born into single-family homes. It's an embarrassing conversation with 400,000 of the 1.1 million babies that are aborted per year being black, 42% of the abortions being black women when we're only 6% of the population. These are not conversations that are easy to have, that are comfortable, but when we start to have them ourselves, not relying on whites, not blaming members of the police force or the government or whatever your favorite group is, when we start talking about it in our house, how we don't go to church anymore, how we don't raise our children. You were talking about asking your kids what they do in school each day. We are not doing that as a community on an individual basis in our households, making sure there's a father there. Don't have kids with a man you don't want to spend the rest of your life with. These are all things that not only should we talk about them, but we should make a mind and heart change that we're going to start doing things the way we used to so we can bring the success back into our community.
Stacey, don't go away. I want you to stay with me through this break. And when I come back, I want to ask you about the hypocrisy that many times we see in movements like Black Lives Matter and Hands Up, Don't Shoot. On with Stacey on the right, StaceyOnTheRight.com. Stacey Washington, I'm CL. I'll be right back. CL back with you on this Tuesday evening, and we're on with Stacy on the Right, Stacy Washington, and you want to go to stacyontheright.com to check out what she is cooking and what's going on in her great mind. And Stacy, I wanted to ask you about the hypocrisy that perhaps, and I want to get your take on it, the hypocrisy that perhaps we're seeing with movements like Black Lives Matter and Hands Up, Don't Shoot, in lieu of the fact that if they would amass the type of numbers in inner city Chicago, New Orleans, or Philadelphia, or Baltimore, I think that would be a much more effective way to change the narrative. What would you say? Would you speak to that?
Well, CL, it's interesting because the police chief down in Dallas is making major news over the last 24 hours, discussing how everyone's all up in arms. Some people are excited, some people are disgusted, because he said, if you want to see change in your community, stop protesting, come and apply. And he doesn't mean that everybody that applies will become a police officer, and he doesn't mean that that's the only thing you can do to help, but he is asking for more participation from the very community that claims it has such a horrible relationship with police. Now, in Dallas, it turns out they don't have as much wrong as they do right. They've lowered crime there significantly. It's at 1923 levels of crime with the current population. I mean, they have amazing outreach between the police officers there and the different communities, and they have a huge diversity quotient there in Texas. So it's an amazing story, but that's not what we're talking about. I find it interesting that in light of everything that's going on, the Black Lives Matter protesters have chosen to focus in on the smallest death toll that the black community experiences. The least number, it's just a few hundred people per year, and every life is valuable, and every one of them I would prefer to see live and see a day in court or what have you than to be killed at the hands of an officer-involved shooting. But let's face it, the majority of these cases are where the person reaches for the officer's gun and endangers the officer's life, and use of force is justified. So the other numbers that are much larger for us are black-on-black crime, 5,700 a year on average when you take the high and low numbers. And that's per year, black-on-black crime. That's a much larger number than 500 or so. And we don't talk about that.
We don't. And, Stacy, you and I are very familiar with being called all types of names for embracing the common sense approach that you just laid out. And I like you, and you spoke to that very well. But I'd like you to speak to this now. As far as the way we succeed as human beings, not just colors, but as human beings, I have seen, in my experience, we succeed as individuals first, and then we contribute to groups of people of like mind. Like you and I are conservatives, black conservatives in particular. Okay, and so, but you succeed as yourself, as Stacy Washington. I succeed as CL Bryant in our own little spheres of influence and what have you. And then, like now, we are together and we can actually form other groups. But what we have been led to believe, and I think as far as the progressive liberals and the impact they've had on the black community over that span of time, is that they have taught us to groupthink, and therefore we don't operate as successful individuals because of it. Could you bring some more light to that, or what do you think about that idea? How would you speak to that?
Well, CL, you kind of nutshelled it, but I want to go into it's really rudimentary, and I get tired of people calling me an Uncle Tom and saying, well, you're not saying anything new. Well, something is new as long as the person who's listening isn't actually doing it. And what I like to talk about is how, like you said, as individuals, who is my worst enemy? It's not some mythical white guy or some real white guy. It's not the white people that I work with at the radio station or the guy who designs my blog. It's not these white people. It's me. I am my actual own worst enemy because I'm 80% of what I have, what I do, what I am, what you see when you see me is my decisions. 20% is my circumstances. So that means you can overcome your circumstances by making right choices. Even if you don't make the right choices 100% of the time, 80% of the time, you can even make the right choice 50% of the time. As long as you're persistent and continue to make choices, you will achieve a level of success. It's really completely and wholly controlled by yourself. Now, some people will say, well, poverty situations they're hard to escape, but they're not impossible. We see stories every single year of children graduating as valedictorian of their high school, and you find out that they were homeless or living in a car or something horrible like that. The choices they made to study and to go to school every day were able to overcome their lack of a place to live and the lack of a regular place to get food and sometimes nourishment and even comfort, to have people around them who love them. So when we start to make decisions based on ourselves, what's best for me, for Stacey Washington, there's a certain group of things that are best. There's a group of things that when I look at myself last year, I'm not doing as well as I'd like to on, so I have to continue to work in those areas. There are other areas where I've completely crossed those things off the list, CL, and I moved on to something else. So am I successful in every single area? No. But if I look back 20 years ago when my husband and I had the choice to live together or get married, and we chose to get married before we had children, that's a decision that has impacted our trajectory from that moment 20 years ago to this day. Every decision we've made, because we were a married couple and then later parents, we base those decisions from our circumstances and the decisions we've made before. Now, if you're already a single parent, I'm not condemning you by any means.
No.
Still be successful. Anyone can. But if you choose to make the decision that's best for you early, instead of saying, well, I'm just going to kind of willy-nilly and it's that white guy or those white people or those police officers who are responsible, then you're going to find yourself on a path that's not the best one that gets you.
Stacey, can you stay with me for one more block?
Absolutely.
Hang in there with me. I'll be back with Stacey Washington. Stacey on the left. Stacey on the right. StaceyOnTheRight.com. I'm CL. Oh, Stacey, please forgive me. I'll be back in just a couple of minutes. CL, back with you on this Tuesday evening here in the jewel cities of the Arklatex. We are streaming live and broadcasting live throughout the fruited plains of the greatest nation on the face of the earth, the greatest success story the world has ever known. And on with me is Stacy Washington, who is the personality behind Stacy on the Right, stacyontheright.com. Go there and check out her thoughts. And Stacy, is there any other way? I mean, tell us how to get a hold of you. How do we investigate your thoughts?
Well, okay, so I post quite heavily on my Facebook page. It's the Stacy on the Right Show. You can find that on Facebook. And then, of course, I have Twitter, Stacy on the Right. Instagram is where you kind of get to look at my real everyday self that's not as political. It's much more fun. And that's also Stacy on the Right. And we just launched our T-shirt, which you can find at strangerat.co, or just click on the banner ad on my blog and go through, and you can have these cool conservative shirts that have catchy sayings on them. Nothing offensive unless you're a hardcore liberal and you don't understand what the truth is. So you might actually get your underwear twisted up, but that's okay. We know that's going to happen, don't we, CL?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, let me ask you this. Here we are, 52 years from 1964, and of course we're here in the year 2016, Stacy. And you mean to tell me that in 52 years we have not, and I'm going to use this word, evolved from Dr. Martin Luther King to Al Sharpton. Stacy, it's a devolution, I guess, in the way that has gone on, but why have we not progressed past some of the topics that are in the news?
Well, CL, when you turn away from God, there's the things in the Bible are true, whether you're a Christian or not. So
right.
You see people who are heavily philanthropic, even though they don't serve God, they give a lot of money and they are blessed. And people who work hard and honor their boss and work for him as if he was the Lord, even if they're not Christians, you see them. Their careers take off. Their trajectory goes up.
It's true.
So God's word is true. It's true, it's true, it's true. It doesn't matter who's obeying what his word says, it's true. And so when we as a community, and we've always relied heavily on God up until just about 20 years ago. If you look at Barna Group research, you see a trend where about 20 years ago, the black community started to be less and less involved in church. And prior to that, we were the number one minority group for church attendance, for religious fervor, for believing the Bible is true from point A to point B, the Alpha and Omega, the whole thing's true. And now we have this, it's a movement and it's a culture that says that we should really look to hip-hop stars and presidents and people who share the same skin tone that we have, and their words are more true and have more impact than this slave master's Bible. I keep having people say that to me online. Wow. When I quote scripture, that's the religion of the slave master. You're brainwashed. Well, I know what I know is that the closer I get to God, the more he blesses me. And so when we don't acknowledge that, we're laughing and spitting in the face of the one who brought us through the most difficult times in history. And also, if you look at statistics, you'll see that right before the social welfare programs were implemented, we had actually a higher rate of marital stability and in wedlock childbirth, the black community did, than everyone else. Then right after those social systems were implemented, women started marrying the government, and poverty has flatlined, and we've spent $20 trillion on it, and there's no end in sight because we haven't had even the slightest little dent as a country on preventing people from becoming poor because we're subsidizing the very behaviors that cause poverty and indigence and all of that. So what can we do? Stop looking at regular men who are full of sin and lack wisdom for the answers to your problems. Every problem you've ever had or will have is addressed within the cover of the Bible. And if you attend to reading it and putting it into your heart, which just means reading it on a daily basis and speaking to God as if he is there because he is, and allowing that to come into you, the fruit of that will be that your mind changes, your heart changes, and your behaviors will change, and you will begin to experience real change, lasting change that meditation can't bring you, affirmations can't do it. The chick on Instagram who's thin says, "Oh, if you just follow me on Instagram, she can't do it for you, baby." You got to go to the Word and get in it, stay in it. And I'm telling you this from experience. I've had major issues in my life where the only way I was able to see my way out of it was when I said, "You know what, God, I can't do this. I've got to get with you. What do you need me to do? What do you want me to do?" And sometimes we're so hard-headed, that's where we have to get, where we're at the bottom and there is absolutely no way out. And then you turn to God, and He's been waiting there the whole time to help you. So, and this is for any problem. I'm not talking about specifically the Black Lives Matter or the police shootings or marital issues, although those are all things that can be solved this way and should be solved this way. I'm talking about that stuff you got going on in your house that you're not even telling your closest friend about, the things that are going on with your children that you have no idea how to handle, the fact that you can't afford to put them in a Christian school. God can fix and will fix all of that if you ask.
Stacey, I just love the way your fervor for it, and with knowledge you are telling it. And everyone knows that when they listen here, whether we're talking about secular things or we're talking about spiritual things or church things or just Jesus Christ, there's one thing that people know that I believe, and I have people on so many times who have opposing views, and people who have views like you and I who certainly agree. But I do believe that the thing that you and I have embraced and has set our lives straight, the Word of God, it sets both the slave and the slave master free. Mm-hmm. And so, listen, we've got to have you on more often. I really need to have you on more often. I'm about to make the next film. I'm thinking of calling it. I'm going to call it Red, White, and Black, and got to interview you for that film. And listen,
when, CL, I'm available to you. I am available to you.
God bless and God keep you.
You're in there.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon. I'm CL. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes with your calls.
Don't let me hear you say lights taking you nowhere.
Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
CL, your native son, back with you on this Tuesday evening here in the jewel cities of the Arklatex. And I got to tell you something, folks. Right now, and I had to call my wife during the break to make sure that the grandkids hadn't had her tied up and burning her at the stake. But she's okay. Because I think my daughter, Miranda, has arrived with her son, Sinclair, along with his daughter, Sanaya. And we got Bailey there at the house. We got Layla at the house. We have Charlie at the house. And, folks, at the house also right now is CL3. We call him Carter. But CL3 is there as well. And we're going to enjoy some really good Louisiana cooking when we get home, prepared by the hands of one of Louisiana's finest chefs, my wife, Jane Bryant. And back to what we were talking about here, and I do have my son Elsie in the studio with me, along with his lovely wife, our girl herself, Crystal Bryant, here in the studios with me. I think I'm going to give you a shout out here in the next segment. Well, this is what we've come down to, and we do have the elections coming up. Now, Jeb Bush is crying sour grapes. Yeah, Jeb, listen, man, get over it. Get over it, Jeb. You blew $40 million trying to derail Donald Trump. I don't think that you're going to do it now. Although he's not going to go to convention, neither is Marco Rubio. Neither one of the former President Bushes will be there. A lot of the Republicans are sitting this one out as far as that is concerned. But I just certainly hope, folks, that you don't sit out the election and let Hillary Clinton become president, because that may be a very, well, there's no maybe to it. That will be a very bad thing. I told you the other day that Hillary Clinton is a student, is a disciple of Saul Alinsky. Barack Obama has only read Saul Alinsky, and he employs Saul Alinsky tactics. Hillary Clinton knew Saul Alinsky. Go to my Twitter page at RevCLBryant, at RevCLBryant. Go to my Twitter page, and you will be able to see for yourself that she was in communication with him way back when she was Hillary Rodham. Okay? Now, Hillary's 70 years old now, and she and Bill have been together a long time, over 40 years, longer than Jane and I have been together. They've been together a long time. And she was in communication with him back in the heyday when all of this was being put together. She knows the way the building blocks of socialism and destroying the fundamentals of America are made. 3 ways that Saul Alinsky outlined in the 12 Rules of Radicals. 3 ways in particular he showed how to outline. He outlined how to destroy a civilization. Confusion, fear creates retreat. Create confusion, which creates fear, which ultimately creates retreat. And folks, that is exactly what you see occurring in America during the fundamental change right now. Americans are confused about how do we get here. We're fearful about our future, and it's causing many of us to retreat to a place where we are actually talking about going along to get along, and too many people are thinking that's what this election is about. Well, we can't beat them, join them. Hey, not this time. You can't do it this time. You cannot do it this time. Whoever, listen, as far as I'm concerned, it has to be only one candidate, because the other candidate, you're not going to be able to hold her feet to the fire. You're not going to be able to do it. She is going to have, and listen, if we lose the House of Representatives, if we lose the Senate, talking about conservatives, talking about Republicans, if we lose that, America as you know it, both for those who embrace socialist agendas, those who are for fundamental change, they don't know what they are going to get. Neither did the people in Greece, neither did the people in Venezuela, where they have no toilet paper. But remember, Hugo Chavez promised them the same things that Bernie Sanders promised if he was to become president of the United States. Hugo Chavez promised all of that. But as Margaret Thatcher once said so famously, eventually you run out of other people's money. Eventually, their money dries up and goes away too. If you overtax the person who runs the toilet paper factory where he can't make the toilet paper anymore, guess what? Eventually, you run out of toilet paper because the guy who was providing jobs doing it can't do it any longer. I'll be right back.
Here comes old Rosa, she's looking mighty fine. Here comes Hot Nancy, she's stepping right on time. Here go the street lights, bring it on tonight. Here come the man, face is hidden from the light. All through the shadow.
CL Bryant Show. And folks, I was just saying when we left, hey, look, let me tell you, you got all these wealthy folk haters walking around. Doesn't make any sense at all. I was telling you that, you can actually run the toilet paper man out of business. The people, just an example. Yeah, it's manufactured. And yes, the people that manufacture it are probably making is probably making a lot of money. But what happens when you run him out of the business? What happens when he doesn't take it from you anymore? Huh? He's gone. Takes all this toilet paper that he can take with him wherever he goes. Venezuela, seriously, they're out of toilet paper. They're actually fighting. They're fighting in the street in Venezuela over toilet paper because they listened to a socialist tell them that government would take care of everything for them. But eventually, sooner or later, you have to run out of other people's money. Here's a kid that I think I raised right. He takes care of his family. And 3 of his children are at the house right now, along with our daughter, his older sister, Miranda, and her son, Sinclair. They're now at the house waiting for us to get back to the house from the studio. And it's my son, LC. And I got it. So you guys are going on vacation or something, huh? Talk right into the mic, son.
Yeah, we're going to Dallas.
Going over to Big D. You guys aren't going to protest or anything.
No. We're just going to ride some roller coasters.
You know the amazing thing about where you come from, they came up from Baton Rouge. That's where they live. And Crystal, y'all got a chance to go down and see the site there where Mr. Sterling was shot. With the day that y'all went down there, Crystal, what was it like from your perspective?
It was very tense. We went out and there was just a lot of people, and it, to be honest, it almost seemed like a little party.
Really, they were sort of having
there was music and everybody was trying to look cute and just to go out and be seen, really.
Be at the scene.
Be at the scene.
Okay. Be seen at the scene.
Right. Whereas there were some people who were serious and really wanted to get their message across. That we have lost someone and we wanted to show our support. And we had our others who were just out there just to be out there. Well,
son, you were saying, you and Crystal were telling me a little bit earlier here today that the store owner there in Baton Rouge, the store owner, actually says that he saw something much different than what some are reporting. What is it that the store owner is saying that he saw that's different from those reports?
Well, it's mainly the small details, really. Like the police say that he reached for his gun, where the store owner, who was 5 feet from the whole incident, says that the police pulled the gun out of
his pocket.
Yeah.
So, from what we have heard, that the decedent, Mr. Sterling, may have had his hand on the gun, threatening the police, but the store owner says that it was the police who actually produced the firearm out of his pocket. And Crystal, you were saying they were sort of like parachute. But what type of pants did he have on?
Oh, I like cargo pants.
Cargo pants is what the decedent had on. Folks, let me tell you this. All in all, it appears that this is a hot mess. Either way you look at it. Both this shooting and the one in Minnesota, in the St. Paul area of Philander Castile. That these two shootings are a mess. And let me tell you, my friend Lawrence Jones III, going to have Lawrence on. Lawrence he works for our good friend Glenn Beck, who's been on the show, but he works for the Blaze now. And I'm going to have Lawrence on hopefully sometime this week, but certainly when I return, I got to run up to Kansas City here at the end of the week, and when I come back, I want to get Lawrence on because Lawrence Jones III interviewed the shooter in Dallas. He interviewed his mother and father, who were separated, and he interviewed the stepmother as well, who is white. And as you recall, the shooter seemingly has major problems with white cops and white people in general. Folks, we can't allow this to become the type of narrative that America dwells on and hangs its collective hat on for too long, because there is a 1,000-pound gorilla in the American living room that we have not had the guts to deal with. And we're going to have to deal with this, or this type of mentality can become incredibly destructive to our society from this day forward. Back to wrap it up in just a couple of minutes. I'm CL. CL, back to wrap it up. Folks, there are some who are calling for the de-escalation of the police and the police presence in the streets and in the neighborhoods of America. And when we talk about the way they de-escalate, for instance, they pull you over. They stop you. They're wanting the police to lower the heat in the way they communicate with suspects. I'm not for that. I can tell you now, I'm not for it. I'm not for it. Because just as we succeed as individuals, we should be judged as individuals in whatever relationship and behavior pattern you find yourself in. Give you for instance, people never know you until they know you, and first impressions are usually the best impressions. Okay, right now, every one of you are cops. It's 11 o'clock at night. You're pulling over a suspect. You've been on the beat since 11 o'clock that morning. So far, you've made it home, and you're about to get off. You have to ask yourself in just real time, and that's splits of seconds, how is this person relating to me in lieu of the fact that I am the one who's wearing the badge? I am the one who may be coming up on someone who is truly a suspect, or perhaps trying to conceal something. I know many cops around the country. They're human beings, and they have families and lives just like you and I. But the job itself is so much different than anything you can imagine. I've done ride-alongs. Well, I want to thank God for bringing us to the close of yet another day, and I want to thank Him for our men and women in uniform around the globe who defend our right to speak our mind. And until I'm able to talk to you again, I'm CL, and may God bless and keep you all.
And to the families left behind, we'll stand by your side, and the bond will never be torn.